quite the talent he is. Proper chatterbox yada. If you're keen, it'll be brilliant.
Today, we're going to keep it simple. I'll bark out a basic command and you watch.
Keen to know? He'll set your tail wagging. Does mine, hence why I'm backing him. Right then, Wookie here. Do take a seat, won't you? Give us your full attention while we listen to my pal, Yada.
Welcome back to our series called Basics. We are examining the basis of Yahowah's name. And when we do so, we are brought into proximity of one of the most interesting word pictures. It is the 30th proverb or mashal. And in it, there are some very profound questions that are asked. This proverb should, of course, be near and dear to our hearts because it is the one which follows this that, well, changed much of what we had previously thought relative to the people and places, timing of events throughout God's story. It is the final word picture, which, of course, launched a whole series of programs, an entirely new book called Coming Home for Mayorth Luminaries, as we were confronted with in this final word picture, a portrait of how Dod's failed relationship with Yahowah was ultimately resolved by a person he referred to as his mother. And it wasn't his birth mother because he shamed her, calling her a whore. It was a surrogate mother, at least on this occasion. And she and her husband played the pivotal role in restoring Dod's relationship with Yahowah. And as we pursued that, it led to the floodgates of understanding being opened to us. Well, this is the proverb or mashal that precedes it. And it is particularly relevant to this discussion on Yahowah's name. So let's turn to it now and determine Yahowah's perspective on such thing. It begins with the lyricist who refers to himself as Agur ben Yaka, a child burning to gather and receive. He introduces himself. The word of Agur. Agur means to be gathered in and received in the harvest. Could be a synonym for the covenant family, could be a synonym for Dod, and his representation of Yahudah. It could be Dod's herald, the son of Yaka. Yaka is burning passion and blazing fire. It, of course, is a synonym for Yahowah's brilliant light and his passion for Yahudah. But it is also possible that when speaking of being gathered in and received in the harvest and of a burning and blazing light, that we turn our attention to the greater and lesser luminaries of Genesis 1, who, as the sun and moon, are significant players throughout Yahowah's story, particularly as it relates to the harvest, Bakudim, Shabua, and Teruah with Yahowah. And so this could also be the intent because it speaks of Agur, the one gathered in and received in the harvest, who is the son of Yaka, a fiery passion and bright light, as the one who is uplifting, is the one who bears burdens. And this would speak to either of the Mayor, the luminaries, and that one bore our burdens on matzah 2,000 years ago, and the other will bear the burdens of the remnant on Teruah just 7 years from now. So it is exceedingly interesting as to how this begins. Now, the challenge of correctly deducing the meaning of words as well as the names which are derived from them is, I think, highlighted when considering the synonym yaka, burning passion, blazing light, if you will. And in this case, it takes some doing. Most scholars realize that yaka is based upon yaka. What you didn't see there is that one of the studio lights we have here decided that it would slam against the table that I'm sitting behind. It's a formidable breeze that we have going here, King of the cables. It is. But the show must go on, as they say. Let's hope that this advanced shore mic is up to the occasion. So, as I've said, a number of scholars, they will acknowledge that Yaka, this name, was based upon Yaka'a, but that is where they obviously often go astray, because they would have us believe it means obedience. But by pronouncing religious nonsense, communicators and translators not only demonstrate collective ignorance and a complete unawareness of the author's intent, they remain clueless as to who is speaking in this mashal and what is being revealed. And I think that's inexcusable, because all we have to do to comprehend who is communicating with us is to appreciate what they represent, and to understand the object and the moral of the story is to consider Yahweh's use of Yaka'ah. It is deployed twice, once in Bereshith, Genesis 49:10, and the other is in the 17th verse of this very mashal, this proverb. And in both places, burning passion and fiery light serves as a more reasonable rendering. Thank you. We're going to see if we can lock in our lights and our cables a little bit more as everything. Excuse me as I'm laughing as we're trying to move things. It's amazing how strong the wind can be. But in this particular case, when you have the Agor speaking of being taken in the harvest, and then we see Yaka speaking of this idea of burning passion for the fiery light, and of loving the enlightening nature of the light. We have another ode directly to the two individuals who serve as Yahweh's Mayoreth, luminaries. They are the men who we're told fulfill the Moedim, the restoring witnesses to the eternal testimony. And in particular, it's Dod who enabled the Bakodim harvest, and it is Yada who is responsible for Shabua and Teruah. So it would be one of the two who is speaking to us here, and based upon the text and what we have learned thus far, it would be the Katan Mayor who will be addressing the Gadol Mayor. Now, since this chapter is devoted to understanding the names Yahweh revealed, including Yahweh's name, let's delve in head first and see what we can learn prior to returning to this Mashal proverb. It is perfect because it is among the most difficult to translate, making it an ideal environment for us to explore using the resources at our disposal. So as we press ahead, we are confronted with a series of words with many meanings, most of which are misrepresented in almost every Bible translation, as the religious are wont to do. These include the noun Shabbat, the verb shur, the name Yahudah, the verb makok, and the actionable preposition bien. Even the noun regel, the preposition and noun ad or ed, depending on how you choose to vocalize it, and the title Shilah, currently transliterated by most as Shiloh. And all of that comes before we even encounter the definition of Yaka'ah. Now, to set the scene, Jacob, now known as Yisrael, is telling his sons what will befall their descendants at some point in the very distant future. The passage containing, I should say, Yaka'ah, is the eighth pronouncement regarding Yahudah, his fourth son with Leah, who is his first wife. It reads, the tribes and people, the staff and the scepter, as well as the writing implement of the branch. This is from Shabbat, a word that conveys all of those things, the tribes and the people. Typically speaking of Yisrael, the staff of a shepherd, the scepter of a ruler, and the writing implement of the branch, of which there are two, Dod and Yada. It speaks of the major subdivisions of the nation, and this clan, it's used in regard to one of Jacob's 12 sons, the people from the same race, Yahudah, since it is singular, the walking stick, the pen, and the rod of the ruler, the implement which is sharpened to inscribe and influence, and the ruler and his spear. So it says, the tribes and the people, the staff and the scepter, the writing implement of the branch will not be taken away. This is lo sure. When brought back, will not be removed or depart again. He will not be abolished, separated, neither rejected nor forsaken from Yahudah. Yahudah is a compound of Yahweh and Dod. It means beloved of Yah. It can also convey related to Yah. He was the son of Jacob and Leah, Dod's ultimate forefather, inaccurately transliterated Judah, and now sometimes Jew. This is Bereshith, Genesis 49:10 in part. All right, so the primary meaning of Shabbat is tribe, followed by the subdivision of a nation, a family group, a clan, and related people, all addressing Yahudah, because Shabbat was singular in this context. The tertiary definitions include branch, writing implement, rod, staff, and walking stick. When these are considered collectively, Dod among all Yehudim wielded each of them on behalf of his people. Now, next in priority, we find scepter as the symbol of a leader, which could be a staff or a javelin. And once again, there is only one leader among Yehudim who used a staff, scepter, and javelin, all effectively to lead and then protect Yisrael. Therefore, by rendering, Shabbat simply as scepter, as is the case with most Bibles, at the exclusion of all other insights which direct our attention to Dod and only Dod, the translation is either ignorant or deliberately misleading. Either way, when a word is inadequately translated, it opens the floodgates to religious misinterpretations, as is the case with Christianity and this prophecy. These things known should, about Shabbat, and followed by the negation of the verb sure, this opening statement suggests that neither the branch, the shepherd's staff, the scribal authority, the scepter, nor ruler, each serving as symbols for Dowd, will be taken away from Yehudah. All of these things from the Jewish people themselves, from the branch to prophetic authority of the one writing the word of God, from the shepherd to the protector. It's not going to be annulled. It will remain part of Yehudah, and it will always pertain to Dowd. The verb sure was negated with lo. It can be translated as will not go, or will not come, will not turn away, or will not leave. And it can say will not be removed, rejected, forsaken, or abolished. It was scribed in the call imperfect, which depicts a literal interpretation of ongoing and continuous outcomes. And while there are some considerable differences in potential meanings among these choices, the most consistent thread reveals that this long list of important things will not be removed from Yahudim, which we now consider to be Jews. That being true, with this prophecy, Yahowah has obliterated the very basis of the world's most popular anti-Semitic cult, Christianity. It crumbles when the prospects of replacement theology are removed. Not only isn't this prophetic of Jesus, it devastates the myths which grew out of his mythological characterization. The promises Yahowah made to Yehudah through Jacob, which is Yisrael, remain steadfast and unwavering. Yehudim Jews have always been and will forever be Yahowah's favorite tribe, the subdivision of the nation, family group, clan, and related people that he loves the most. And foremost among the Yehudim is the man Yahowah called the branch, the one man who God chose to shepherd his flock. And he wielded the pen more effectively than a staff. He remains the one man God himself chose to hold the scepter of the nation. And Yahowah made certain that when he held his javelin, he would always prevail, consistently protecting his people. Yehudah, Yahudi, and Yahudim speak of Judah, Jew, and Jews. In today's vernacular, anyway. They mean beloved of Yah and related to Yah. This, therefore, cannot be a Christian prophecy as the church so badly desires. Now, as we move on to the next statement, and again negating the Christian insistence that this is addressing pretend Jesus rather than actual Dowd, Mashok is not a noun describing a staff, but instead a verb depicting the process of identifying someone who choke inscribes the prescriptions for living, which Moshe addresses throughout the 4th chapter of Devarim, Deuteronomy. It is a compound of ma to consider the who, when, why, and where of cha'ak, the appointed scribe known for his thoughts. Cha'ak is from the root choke, which means inscribed or scribe prescriptions, that which is etched in stone for life. When these clearly communicated prescriptions cut us into the relationship and allocate a share of the covenant. In this regard, the most prolific essay on the merit of the choke was presented in Dowd's famous 119th Mizmor or Psalm. And as Yahowah has made clear, the choke are inseparable from the Torah and have no place in the Talmud or New Testament. An accurate and complete analysis of the opening stanza of this prophetic declaration identifies the subject and the object because we have chosen to be observant and thoughtful. We now know where we're headed. This reads, therefore, determining the identity of the one who inscribed the prescriptions for living, contemplating the writing implement, the walking stick and staff of the one designated as a scribe and as a shepherd who expounds upon the choke, from ma, to consider the who, when, why, and where of the cha'ak, the appointed scribe known for his thoughts, which is from the root choke, as I've shared, an engraved prescription for living, is derived from an understanding of his stance as an eternal witness to the restoring testimony. Barashith 49:10, also in part. So following the verb makok, we find one of my favorite Hebrew words, bien. As a preposition, it means between, and thus speaks of making a connection between things. It is based upon the verb bien, which is spelled identically in the original text. Bien means to understand by being discriminating and discerning. Bien reveals that we transition from knowing to understanding by making the proper associations and connections between things, just as we are doing now with this pronouncement from Yisrael regarding Yahudah. And, of course, his most glorious descendant, Dod. Hu regel can be rendered as his feet, his stance, or where he stands. Within a prophecy, this profound, within a prophecy, I should say, that is this profound. The last two thoughts or renderings, I think, are the most relevant, while the first, not so much. We don't care much about his feet, but we do care a lot about his stance and where he stands. Further, even if we were to limit Shabbat to scepter, it is held in one's hands and not between one's feet, making the Christian Bible translations and renderings moronic. Moving on, Ed conveys an exceedingly important concept because it is used throughout the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. And it is a Hebrew term that Christians have replaced with the Latin-derived scripture. It means, actually, restoring witness and eternal testimony. And in this case, as God has revealed through his prophets, the most prolific were Moshe and Dod, followed by Yashaya and now perhaps Yada. And of them, only one was a descendant of Yahudah. Collectively, then, after revealing the symbols associated with the object of this prophetic pronouncement regarding what Yahweh will bring to God and man, or what Yahudah will bring to God and man, Dod fulfills Chag Matzah, we find Yisrael introducing Ha-Mashiach, the Messiah, Dod. As a result of what he has inspired, Yahweh is encouraging us to ascertain and affirm the identity of the one explained by the choke, and whose stance on the restoring witness and eternal testimony is very well known. And just as if we needed another clue, if we were still searching for answers, God gives us Shilah. This reads, indeed, Shilah, the singer and songwriter, the vocalist and lyrist who is consistent and successful, prosperous, secure. It's used as an epithet of the Messiah, Dod. It is from Shalah, to prosper, to be kept safe, and remain happy. It is also related to Shur, singer and songwriter, and Sheath, one who performs based upon a consistent mindset. And it says that indeed the Shilah, the singer and songwriter, will arrive. This is also from Bereshith, Genesis 49:10. In part, it was a very long verse as it was delineated by the Twistians in creating their Bible. It is incriminating that these Christians, in their translations, after inadequately conveying the meaning of Shabbat and the verb sure, then errantly transliterate the name Yahowah, turn to the verb Masayach into a noun rather than leaving it actionable. And then they fail to appreciate the implications of bien and what it pertains to our understanding. Then, even after missing the purpose of Ed, which is a restoring witness to the eternal testimony, they just simply gave up and they transliterated Shilah, rendering it Shiloh, because they were clueless as to what the word actually stated, how it was written, and what it meant. And yet, in the very dictionaries these institutions published, we find that Shur addresses a singer and songwriter, and that Sheath speaks of one who performs based upon a consistent mindset. Yahowah has but one singer and songwriter of note, the consistent, prosperous Dode, the king of Yisrael. And it is Dode writing the 30th, I would say it's either Dode is, I think he's the subject of the 30th Mishal Proverbs. And he is being acclaimed by the man whom Yahweh has given the responsibility of reflecting his light under the synonym Agur ben Yaka, the one who is harvested. And who is part of that ingathering, who is passionate about reflecting this fiery light. The pieces of the puzzle, I think, now fit together quite nicely. It just took a little bit of research on our part. Jacob, who became Yisrael, is addressing the most important man who ever lived. Torah is filled with references to Dode. He was the ultimate, or would be at that point, has been now, and will continue to be the ultimate Yehud. He is the Son of God and the Messiah, the shepherd and king, the prophet and savior. He wrote and sang the songs that Yahweh cherishes. The prophecy said that he is returning, and that means that there is no second coming for guess who, albeit there is a return of the man who will have been here 5 to 6 times previously in Dode. This happens to be the first of 2 times that Yakah was used to convey the basis of the name Yakah, Agar's father. It is used in the Torah and the prophets without any corroborative justification etymologically. Bible publishers are wont to render it obedience, as I have mentioned. So here is the concluding line of Bereshith 49:10 for our consideration. Then, directed towards him, will be the burning passion that is kindled and ablaze, the fiery flame of the family. Bereshith, in the beginning, Genesis 49:10. And we should expect no less. The Yehud Yahweh chose his anointed Messiah, the King of Yisrael, the shepherd leading and protecting God's flock, the branch from which we grow, the brilliant prophet and lyricist Dode, is returning to be King of Kings over a jubilant family of reunited Yehudim as part of the reconciliation of Yisrael. And this, his final of 6 or 7 lives among his people, will not be his most remarkable, because in the previous one, Dode fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, leading to Bikurim, fulfilled Pesach and Matzah, I should say, leading to Bikurim, and he became our Savior. Yahweh says that when he returns, his distinction, his seat of honor, as well as his full moon, will be as brilliant as the sun. He is referred to as a luminary throughout God's testimony. And the man who restores his dignity, who reflects his brilliance, is also part of all of these prophecies, saying that they will be pals and comrades, collaborators, co-workers forevermore. So Yah speaks of fanning the flames by kindling a fire, and thus metaphorically of burning with passion. And it therefore speaks of the two men that Yahweh has positioned in this light, Dod and Yada, who more than anyone else in the Torah and prophets embody these characteristics. Under passion and dictionary, we ought to see, well, Dod's smiling face under the auspices of the very sun of the most brilliant. So now on this second day of October during Yom Kippurim and year 2033, the children of Israel will embody see the embodiment of these characteristics of their favorite son as he returns to lead them to the promised land, a return to the garden in Sukkah. They were blind, but now they see. Now, having spent a quarter century translating Yahweh's enduring testimony, I can affirm that we were meant to find this connection between this synonyms, Yaakov, as its use in Yisrael's prophetic portrait of Yahowah and his beloved son, Dod, by peeling back the meanings of the words to their original intent. We have discovered the first of many prophecies which Christians have pilfered from Dod to make their mythological Jesus appear real. There will be hundreds more, of course, as we find the reprehensible religion building the myth of Jesus Christ out of prophecies, all misappropriated from Dod. And from the perspective of a Yehud Jew, the message here is that Dod, your long-awaited Messiah, is returning with Yahweh. This will be concurrent with the reconciliation of Yisrael and Yehudah, which is the intent of Jacob's prophecies, and that reconciliation is enabled by the Katan Meor, who serves as the Adam Parah to purge this remnant of Yisrael so that they're able to witness the great homecoming, the family reunion, and the wedding, all of which take place on Yom Kippurim. So returning now to the 30th Mashal, I think a bit wiser than we were before this journey into etymological discovery, we should view Agar, I think, as Dod's herald, as the Katan Meor to the Gadol Meor. He's writing on behalf of Yehudah, God's people. And from this perspective, Yaka is right at home, serving as a metaphor for Yahweh's intent to passionately reveal his light and the brilliance of his son. This reaffirms that Dode and Yahowah are father and son. It returns us to the realization that our burdens will be borne by their collaboration. So it reads, the word of Agur. He is the one gathered in and received in the harvest. The son of Yaka, a son who is burning with passion, one who conveys the nature of the brilliant light and blazing fire. And he is the one who is uplifting. This is a prophetic pronouncement of the empowered individual, the Gabor, the mighty defender and strong man, the one who will prevail, who is confident and will confirm, the one who is strengthened as, oh, this is a very interesting term. It's Eth El. Eth El. I am a man of God. Regarding I am, an individual approaching the Almighty. It is from Ish, individual, the Yod, which is from Ani, and it means I or my, and El, Almighty God. On behalf of Ish El, the individuals approaching my God, who you call, who devour, and who consume. Mashal Word Pictures 31. So once again, we are challenged to ascertain what the writer was proposing. Now, so that we're clear, there was no prophet named Agur ben Yaka. This is a pseudonym. And I think you can view it as a pseudonym for Dode, but I think it's more likely a pseudonym for the one reflecting Dode's life, the one who will conduct the two harvests prior to Dode's return, the lesser luminary who reflects the greater luminary's brilliance. And it speaks of his burning passion for God's people. Likewise, neither Ithiel nor Eukel are names. They instead represent the author of this declaration, as well as the remnant of Israel. Now, there were some 40 prophets, Dode being among the most prolific of them, but he alone among Yahweh's prophets was a Gabor, a strong, mighty defender of Israel. However, so is his herald. He's also a mortal man who is a defender of Israel. So the Messiah and King, as well as his herald, Yada, both serve as a synonym, as the synonym Ithiel suggests. They're men of God. They are foretelling of a time when men will approach God and will ukal. Then they will devour and consume their foes. Now that speaks more of the herald than of the king, because by the time the king returns, the foes will all have been consumed. Now, since this prophecy regarding the future of Yahudah served to explain the meaning of Yaka, what follows makes the most sense when Agur is seen as a synonym for this relationship between Dode and Yada, with Yada reflecting the sun of God's brilliance, and metaphorically, of course, them both serving Yahudah. The one reflecting the most brilliant of men who ever lived, is not calling himself foolish, but is instead revealing that Yahweh has been, or Yahudah, I should say, the children of Israel, the Jews, have been senseless for a very long time. As for what they are a cow devouring, we'll find out as we approach the 14th statement of this mashal. But suffice it for now, Dode is not impressed with what his descendants have become or with what they have done to one another, and therefore, nor is his herald. Speaking for them as if he were one of them, we read, "Indeed, my understanding is insufficient. Truly, I am senseless as an individual. I am unable to deduce the connections needed to understand Adam, mankind." So, this is the essence of the problem, the very thing which separates Jews from Yahweh. Pretending to be Torah scholars, rabbis are clueless about God, and so are the Haredim. Pretending to be wise, they have become fools. So, this was written to convey the problem that is so pervasive throughout Israel, a complete ignorance of God. A writing for them, it continues with, "I have not learned how to be perceptive or to think prudently. So I do not know, or I do not acknowledge, and I do not understand. I'm unaware of yada and of the set apart things." Proverbs 33. So this is again being projected upon Israel, particularly in the last days, but it's been true throughout time. The things which are set apart unto Yahweh, of course, include his name, his spirit, his covenant, his Torah, his Moedim, his Mikre, one and the same, his Shabbat, his people, Yehudim and Yisrael, Jerusalem, Moriah, the spiritual realm, and of course, his firstborn son, Dode, even the Ark of the Covenant. These things do not include anything which is common to man, which would be religion, politics, conspiracy, social customs, or caste systems, and today, anti-Semitism. Appreciating what it means to be set apart from the things men embrace so that we can be set apart unto Yahweh, it is essential to develop the kind of relationship that God intended. So we need to know what he values to be valued by him. He wrote, "Who has actually ascended to the spiritual realm of the heavens and then descended? Who has gathered the harvest of the Spirit within the very hollow of his hands? Who has enclosed and confined the waters in a garment? Who finally comes unto the scene, stands upright for everyone, contemplates the mission to restore, enabling all to stand without ceasing, and thereby establishing the entire earth and material realm? What is his name? And what is his son's name? Surely, you yada. You know." Mashal, word pictures, Proverbs 34. Well, it's this line that caused me to conclude that while the introduction spoke of symbolically of either the greater or lesser luminaries and their passion for Yahweh's light, by asking, "Do you know his son's name?" it became obvious to me that this is, wow, we almost lost a full panel on the other side of this table, that this is the Catan, the younger luminary, speaking of the older luminary as Yada reflects Dode's light. And that is why it was worded this way. I think this in the 30th Mashal, the second to last word picture, is among the most profoundly important statements, although it's a question, written anywhere. And I would beg God's people to ponder the implications of it. I would. It's why we included it on the basics regarding Yahweh's name. It asked the question that the Jews can no longer answer. Christians, of course, can't answer. Muslims can't answer. The secularists can't answer. It is the question that I was the first to answer in 2,500 years. Both questions I was the first to answer. Tells you who wrote the Mashal, doesn't it? So who has actually ascended? Has gone up, been withdrawn, carried away, lifted up to the spiritual realm of the heavens, and then descended. You know who the first person that we read in the Torah who meets that criterion? Who has actually ascended to the spiritual realm of the heavens and then descended? Dode. No, not Dode. Absolutely not Dode. That is the implication. No. A fellow named Chanuk was the first. He's a little younger than Adam, who is Dode, by some 600 years. But didn't God take him? And since his name speaks of being continually deployed, trained and prepared for deployment, and it's obvious that God has redeployed him, wouldn't he be the first one who actually ascended to the spiritual realms? Indeed. Now, the one who made this journey and then returned, who is the most important, is his brother, his compatriot. It's Dode. So your answer was not inaccurate, King of the Cables. You just got a little ahead of yourself. It is Ethan. Ha is Rocky, also known as Chanuk. You know, it's interesting in this regard that he was the first who was taken by God. He is the author of this Mashal. He is the one asking you these questions. And of course, the one that he is most interested in was ascended to heaven right around 1000 BCE, 972 BCE to be exact. Was no, that was the end of that particular life as the shepherd who became king of Israel. He descended from heaven to be born to Ruth and Boaz. Remember, Ruth and Boaz are the two where she pronounces to Boaz that I am your Amma. I am the productive mother. And I will deliver to you, Boaz, the kinsman redeemer. Well, they were the parents of Dode when he returned to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim, some 33 years prior to 33 CE. Year 4000 Yah. So who has gathered the harvest of the Spirit within the hollow of his hands? Now, if you were to view this in past tense and understand Asaph, which is the verb, brought together and withdrawn, uh, doesn't have the ability for us to lock it in to a prior period of time. All verbs are free in time, liberated in time, just as light is reflective of all time. So this could also say, who will gather the harvest of the Spirit within the hollow of his hands. So if you want to read it as who has gathered the harvest of the Spirit, when this was written, the answer is no one. But it's a prophecy. And so it needs to be stated as who will gather the harvest of the Spirit within the hollow of his hands, because this would have been written circa 1000 BCE, right around year 3000, and the one who enabled the first of the three harvests was Dode, and that wouldn't occur for another 1,000 years in 33 CE. But the ultimate harvest is Shabuah, and the great day of Yahowah is on Teruah, also a gleaning. So again, you have the two Maor, these two luminaries, addressing what they themselves have done. So the man speaking on behalf of Dode here and asking these questions on behalf of Dode is the only man who will do what Dode has done: gather in a harvest, doing so on behalf of the Spirit, doing so within the hollow of his hands. So the answer here is both the writer of the Mashal and the subject of the Mashal. Who will gather in this harvest of the Spirit, of the Ruach within the hollow of his hands? And for that, you have to understand the Moedim. You have to understand that in Genesis 1, we find that Yahweh tells us that the purpose of the greater and lesser luminaries is to serve, to fulfill the Moedim, these appointments of the restoring witnesses to the eternal testimony. And when you recognize that, God tells us very clearly in his Torah that 3 of the 7 are harvests: Bokurim, Shabuah, and Teruah. And of course, it is the Spirit that enables all of them. If it were not for the Spirit, Dode would not have survived Matzah to enable Bokurim as the harvest. And without Bokurim, there is no Shabuah harvest. And without the Shabuah harvest, you can't get to Teruah. And it's all as a result of the influence of these two men collaborating with Yahweh, because they were recipients of Yahweh's Ruach. So the next question is, who has enclosed and confined the waters in a garment? So, as it relates to waters, there's actually not a lot that can be attributed to Dode. But there is some, in that he wrote specifically in the 22nd Mizmor, when speaking of how he came to be presented, born, to fulfill the Moedim of Chag Matzah, Pesach, Matzah, and Bokurim, that he broke forth from the waters of his mother. So there is that reference. He is the shepherd who stood beside the still waters on behalf of his people. It is the younger of the two luminaries, reflecting the greater luminary's light, who's the man of the sea. He's the Goyim who comes from the sea. He's the Nakri, this observant foreigner. And he is the one, when we speak of a harvest. He is the one who Yahowah will surround with waters. Because when he performs as the Adama Parah on Teruah, Yahowah is going to release a torrent of water from underneath the Temple Mount to cleanse his people. And of his garments, we're told a lot. Not long after this was written, Yahshua would speak in the 63rd chapter of the man from Edom, of this man-serving men, who will save a great many, who the prophet was keen to say was dressed in red, because he came from this wine vat. And he was Yahshua, Zeroah, the one cultivating the seeds of the harvest that Yahshua loved to speak, which was Shabuah and Teruah. And so his garments are a source of water, of purging and cleansing. Who finally comes unto the scene, stands upright for everyone, completes the mission to restore, enabling all to stand without ceasing, establishing the entire earth and material realm. Well, yeah, Dode. Yes, Yada. Different times, different Moed. And of course, the common denominator between them is Yahowah, who enables them to come onto the scene, who delivers them into this scene, so they can stand up for others, because they're completing the mission God has provided to them to restore his people, enabling others to stand, all without ceasing, doing so on behalf of the material realm, the land and the earth. So, what is his name? I have always viewed the what is his name as Yahowah, and then what is his son's name as Dode. And no matter how you view that first question, what is his name, because it was not actually Yahowah who did the things that came first. It wasn't Yahowah who has actually ascended to the spiritual realms of the heavens and then descended. It was Chanuk Enoch, who will have lived, by the time this is fulfilled, 8 lives. Dode also, he will have lived 6 or 7 lives. Yahowah works through people, and therefore he gathered in the harvest of the Spirit within the hollow of the hands through the effort of Dode and of Yada, greater and lesser luminaries, or some would say the older and younger. The one who comes from the waters, whose garments are particularly important, both Dode and Yada. It's Yahshua who speaks of Yada's waters and garment, and yet it is Dode who writes of his own. In the 22nd Mizmor, even talking about how the perpetrators of the torture of his body on Passover would throw lots for his garments. I think it is mostly because of the waters Yahowah will release, the sacrifice of Yada, and the fact that Yahshua is insistent that he is dressed appropriately for his mission. His garments are an important part of his appeal from the prophet's perspective. It isn't Yahowah who comes onto the scene, but Yahowah enabling those souls that he most respects, that he is confident in using. And he is the one who enables them to arrive and stand upright for everyone else. It's particularly Yada and Dode who complete the mission to restore. They complete the job. They are relentless, never ceasing. And it's through them that God has established the land, the earth, the material realm. So what is his name? Well, Yada is God's name. Yahowah is God's name. Yada is the other name. Yeah. The one who did this, it is Yada who did all of these things. He did them all through the empowerment of Yahowah, who made them all happen. What is his son's name? Oh, that's why I shared the story of Ruth and Boaz, because that's how the kinsman redeemer was delivered. Yes, Dode is the firstborn son of God. That's why he's Adam. He's the one that God conceived out of the product of the earth, the material realm, as this speaks, and who he breathed in a nasama and a nefesh, a consciousness and a conscience, such that Dode literally is Yahweh's firstborn. And so God refers to Dode as his son. But we share that in common because Dode is also my son. I stood up for him as a surrogate father. Once his time with Yahowah was so occluded with all manner of inappropriate behavior and conclusions, when Dode and Yahowah were no longer on speaking terms. And that's when I intervened for Dode as a father, co-authoring the 89th Mizmor with Yahowah on the son's behalf. But I would become his actual father, as Boaz, as Ruth became his mother, delivering the kinsman redeemer as the most productive mother. So my son's name is Dode. Surely you know Yada. You recognize and understand Yada. Are you acquainted with Yada? Mashal Word Pickers, Proverbs 34. And so all the way through these first four statements, we have a very interesting duality. We have a man speaking of another man on behalf of God, because those two men are so similar that every word that is spoken and written by one on behalf of the other also applies to the one writing about him. And those two men are so inseparable from Yahowah. If you know one, you know the others. If you know his name, you know the son's name. Yada. All the way through. It is brilliantly written, albeit scribed at a level that would not be understood, well, until this moment, as part of this program, on considering the names Yahowah, Dode, and Yada. Surely you know Yada. This is prophecy for thinking individuals. This is written at a PhD level. We are no longer in grade school. This is the second to last of the word pictures. Surely you know. What's his name? What's his son's name? Yahowah? Dode? Yada. These otherwise rhetorical questions are laden with profound insights. It is instructive to know that both Yarad descends and Allah ascends were scribed in the call relational stem, which speaks of things which are real, actual, and genuine, as opposed to something simply symbolic or hypothetical. And both, like every verb throughout this list of rhetorical inquiries, were written to include the third person masculine singular pronoun, he. Now, the one who causes all of this is God. The ones who he does this through, well, they would be Yada by one of his many names, and Dode by one of his many titles as well. So it is interesting to note that the difference between the grammatical forms found in the first query and the second, Yarad, was conjugated in the imperfect wa consecutive, which is the only Hebrew tense which some would interpret to denote time. And it suggests, at least at the time of the writing, that the subject of this question had already ascended and descended. So further, God's willingness to come down to our level, and I don't think that is the question here, because the ascent preceded the descent, didn't it? So this was written around 3000 and Adam, who's Dode, and Chanakh, who is Yada, would both ascend and then descend many times by the time this was written. So God is telling us that his support of Dode's willingness to serve as the Passover lamb was not his only interaction with his people, nor the interaction of Yada and Dode. You see, Yahowah had walked in the garden with Dode, Adam. You know, Yahowah enjoyed many discussions and meals with Abraham and joked with Sarah, but even then, his ascent did not come before his descent, did it? That's not to say that God hasn't projected his nephesh as an avatar or conveyed through his nature through a malach or through light projecting energy. But, you know, and there are a number of these. So, you know, he met with and blessed Jacob, perhaps renaming the father of his children Yisrael. And before conveying the words of the Torah, God took time to eat and drink with Moshe, Shemoth 24. And he revealed himself to Shamuel as well, particularly in connection with the Ark of the Covenant. There we read Yahowah came, stood, and spoke to Shamuel, appearing so as to be seen, revealing and disclosing himself as the word of Yahowah. That's 1 Samuel 3. So now it comes especially interesting because God predicts the future using the imperfect wa consecutive. I suspect that he does so because it infers that, well, he has actually witnessed our future. And thus, rather than predicting it, he's simply reporting It is future history. As such, these prophecies, rather than having a probability of occurring, are so certain that God describes them as if they had already occurred. Very common in prophecy with Yahowah. So a soul and a spirit, Dode with a mighty assist from Yahowah, fulfilled the promises of Pesach and Matzah, leading to Bekurim, which is a harvest in year 4000 Yah, 33 CE. Collectively, these represent the first of the 7 essential visits, all for relationship, revelation, and redemption, with reconciliation, of course, in the offing. Dodes, via God's 7th Yarad, will be the most imperfect from the conjugation perspective, which is to say ongoing and continuous. His return on Yom Kippurim, father and son, Yahowah and Dode, will be to affirm the reconciliation of his relationship with Yisrael and Yehuda following the harvest and the sacrifice on Teruah. It's, of course, in our near horizon, just 7 years from now, in year 6000 Yah. So then God asks, who has gathered the harvest of the Spirit within the hollow of his hands? This Ashaf Ruach, spiritual harvest, was also penned in the Call Perfect. It takes place at a particular moment in time and is very real. And that means that this gathering will actually occur on behalf of the covenant family. And, of course, he would be speaking of Bekurim, Shabuah, and Teruah. All 3 events, bringing in all 3 individuals, the 2 men and their God. The remnant aspect of Ashef is also telling in that 2 out of every 3 Yehudim Jews are going to be separated from their God prior to these, the last of the harvests and the homecoming. We're told in Zechariah that only 1 out of every 3 Jews is going to survive. And the remnant, of course, will be smaller still, because it's only of those whose attitudes and aptitudes show a potential to be purged by the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah. And this Eth Sarah, Yaakov, this time of Israel's adversity, is going to come such that Yahowah has the opportunity to call his people out of hardship one last time, this time with some listening. So with their change in mindset, their relationship with God will be restored. On this day, we are told in Zechariah 12, 9, and 10, that they will look up to him whom they have pierced, as God pours out upon them a spirit of acceptance. This will take place on Yom Kippurim. So transitioning to the next query, we are asked, who has enclosed and confined the waters in a garment? If we are to project this into the past, it may represent creation, when the fluidity of quark plasma following the Big Bang coexist into matter, and time began to flow for the first time. It may describe the retreating waters of the flood, which ultimately provided a safe harbor for the ark for Noah and his family. Now, those familiar with the Hiyatzah, by the way, that's also interesting, because the second coming, if you will, of Chanukh was as Noah. And Noach's son, Shem, is likely Dode. So both men had considerable experience with the parting of the waters, did they not? Now, those familiar with the Yatzah Exodus may see this also as the parting of the waters that gave the children of Israel the means to escape Pharaoh's pursuit. and it projected into the future. Yahowah will stem the surge of millions of Islamic jihadists who will flood into Israel during the time of Yaakov's troubles, which will coincide with the release of tremendous amounts of waters that will emerge from the Temple Mount beneath the sacrifice of Yada as the Adamah Parah. So there is an aspect of Sharar, troubles, that we ought not miss. As a noun, it is used to describe Eth Shara, Yaakov, the time of Israel's troubles. Therefore, it is from tumultuous and troubling waters that Yahowah is offering to protect his people. From this perspective, symbolically, with water serving to convey its life-giving and cleansing properties, the set-apart spirit is going to play a role in the purging of God's people on Teruah with the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah. Now, the next question we read, who finally comes onto the scene, stands upright for everyone, actually completes the mission, which is to restore, enabling all to stand now without ceasing, establishing the entire material realm. Well, what's left of it, right? That's actually only one person. Now, he does so with Yahowah providing 99.9999999% of the contribution, but God likes to work through people, and he likes to give them credit for what they are achieving as collaborators. So the only time that all of those on earth are finally established and the entire earth is restored is on Teruah. When Dod fulfilled Pesach and Matzah, leading to Bokurim, that harvest, there wasn't even a tiny fraction of 1% of those still living on the earth or of the planet itself that were restored. In fact, things got really nasty for the next 2,000 years. It is on Teruah that the waters are released and that the earth is purged, well, of course, by Yahowah, with Yahowah restoring the earth to the conditions found in Eden, with God incinerating and eliminating, expunging from the earth all of those who have been religious and political, conspiratorial and militant, such that all who remain are indeed restored. That takes place on Teruah. It's the greatest show on earth. It is a day where Elia and I get to contribute, but it is clearly God's doing all the things he's going to do at this time. If we want to look at this seriously, literally, it's the only day that is consistent with every nuance of these words. And that doesn't take the focus away from Dod and put it on Yada, because Yada is doing this for Dod. The whole purpose in doing it is so Dod can return as king, and that Yahowah can return, and there will be a great homecoming, a family reunion, and a wedding. It's all taking place for that specific purpose. So that takes us to the identity of the individual or individuals. The one who was speaking and the one who is the subject of this word picture. What is his name? What's the name of the God who enables all of this? What is the name of the person writing this? He answers and said, it's Yada. What is his son's name? Well, that would be Dod. Surely, you Yada. Now, sadly, there have only been a few brief moments in time when a significant number of Israelites have been aware of Yahowah's name. The children of Yisrael came to know it during the Yatzah, Exodus, as they were fleeing religious and political oppression. A united Yisrael would have celebrated it under David's stewardship, although for a brief time even then, and for a moment or two while Shalomo was dedicating the home of Yahweh's name. And while it would have been exclusively Yahudah, there was a brief moment of lucidity to forestall the Assyrian assault on Jerusalem under Hezekiah. By its proper pronunciation, Yahweh remained unspoken and unwritten until we collaborated and began publishing, which you see behind me, the Yada Yahweh series, coupled with Yada Yah Radio and Shattering Myths, and now the Yahweh blog. And while God's name is being celebrated once again for the first time now after 2,500 years, even now, 25 years after we began, fewer than 1 in a million of the nearly, in fact, over 8 billion people who currently occupy our planet acknowledges Yahweh's name. In an informed and rational world, on a planet without religion, we would expect the opposite to be true. With as few as 1 in a million not knowing God's name. But what's so appalling today is that multiple billions will profess the wrong name. They will swear on their lives that the proper name is either Jesus or Allah or Hashem. Again, apart from those who have come to benefit from what we have learned during our prolonged journey through Yahweh's Word, very few individuals would know the correct answer to either of these two questions. And that should be surprising because Yahweh openly identifies my name, Dod's name, and most assuredly, his name. In fact, second only to Yahweh's designation of his name, we find Dod's. It appears 1,100 times. By an errant transliteration, this man, of course, is well known. One of them is, at least, but not as God's son, but only as a former king of Israel. And yet, even then, very few individuals credit him with being the anointed Messiah, even though Yahweh makes this distinction abundantly clear. And of course, Dod is the only person that God routinely says, "He is my son. I am his father." He epitomizes the value of the Torah and the purpose of the covenant. He enabled the benefits of the covenant according to God. That's why these two men, the same two men, collaborate with Yahweh. They are the author and subject of the 89th Mizmor, which is inspired by Yahweh for Yada to reacquaint the son with his proper dignity, with his calling in life. So with this in mind, it becomes evident why Jacob spoke of Yahudah's future songwriter and singer. And now we know why the lyrics of this mashal were cryptic regarding the identity of the author and who he actually represented. So God is rewarding those with a desire to learn that there is an internal connection between the two Maorith, the two luminaries. They are forever bound. And they are always connected to Yahweh. I think this is a good place, Rich, for us to conclude this particular program. It has been an eye opener. We've covered new territory that we have never previously considered. It's the advantage of doing these shows as a live stream based on everything we've come to know and learn over these past 25 years, and can share it with you in real time as part of these programs. And this one devoted to the very name of God. We have a jewel here in the opening of the second to last of the word pictures. So I thank you so much for listening. We look forward to being with you in another program, hopefully later today, hopefully in a little less blustery conditions, but we managed to survive the trade winds, and we'll be back above the sea before too long. Thank you again for listening.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch y'all on our next podcast.